Okay, this is 1822 MX. It's another Scott Peterson game produced by all the boards. Once again, taking a break from Summer Storm. I played, I don't know, what, all of one turn? I don't know. Since the last one. I'm trying to remember if I played one or if I played three. I think I actually played 3 turns. But it's been a long time on this last turn, and I'm debating whether or not to play the rest of it. This one is something of a beast. Now, I understood that 1822 became something of a favorite or whatever because it generated a couple of games off of it that are basically using the same rules, and this is one of them. I figured anything that's such a standard is going to be a fairly light game, right? So when I saw that 1822 MX had a lot of interesting looking mechanisms attached to it, I'm like, cool, okay. This is the way I can kind of get the flavor of the 1822 experience with enough depth that I'd be interested in it. Well, it turns out I was wrong about 1822. In general, the base rules for it are pretty complex, and MX just adds more layers of complexity to it. Let's talk about some of what we've got, and we've got it spread out all over the place. So, we got the board, which you can see tiny little hexes, and the tracks are also tiny. This is kind of cool. The only game that I'm really aware of having this is 18OE. There might be another one that I have. I mean, there are others that have it. 18OE is the European version of, like, I think it's 18US. That's just another humongous game with tons of companies. But they make life a little easier to cope with a big map without taking up a lot of table space. I just find that appealing. The track in this is again, it's the same style as 18OE has, and there were a couple of others that I did about the same time as that had this. It's not the curved track of most 18XX games. Instead, it kind of allows you to treat every switch as completely, you can trace your, I don't remember how I called these, but they're kind of angled tracks. They don't worry about the direction you're entering into the hex. So for example, I can come in from this and curve that way or that way. I found this kind of track opens up a lot more movement, and while it's easier to figure out how to get from A to B, and it actually opens up a lot of, it ends up opening up a lot of pathways and can actually make for some very, very painful track run calculations because you have so many more options. It's just a freer means of dealing with track. On the other hand, I do find it a little bit more realistic than the, idea that, like, track can be blocked very easily. I find these more appealing from the realism point of view. We do have a few different letter cities here, or types of letter cities. We have T's and Y's. The T's are basically along a coastal type region, so they're blocked off. They're marked with these little things to help remind me. Those can go on top of lower level cities because I believe the yellow, there's no T's or Y's for yellow. So in order to mark that you've got a T city on a yellow, you have to have some kind of like little token, and that's what these serve as. There are extra ones of those. I don't know what they're for. There's these, which allow you to upgrade a connection at sea to a port, which will allow you to make a run to that port, I guess. There's Mexico City itself, which has a token just to allow you to not have a gap in the board. I don't know how I feel whether this is necessary or not. Probably not. One thing that these small hexes, and even with the small station markers that they have, they're a little bit tighter to cope with, especially with something like this where there's numbers overlapping. I'm gonna hold off and not put that there until it's necessary, until I deem that it is necessary, which may be never. Player order cards, pretty normal. My bank, the bank is $12,000. This time I did my calculations a little differently, and just to make life easy on myself, I pulled out, I don't know what it is, $6,500 or whatever from whatever my actual treasury is there. I actually have $11,980 in the bank. There's an extra $20, which I can record somehow. Chances are it won't matter. I'm okay if I forget and I have a slightly smaller bank. It's probably not going to make a difference. Although we've had games where it's broken by a few bucks or whatever. Each player starts the game with $300, but they also start with these these cubes, which they're going to be using for bidding at the beginning of the game in the first stock round. And then later on, those become building cubes for the corporations. You'll have a pile of stocks for the different big public companies, a whole shit ton of minor companies, 24 of them, a lot of private companies, I don't remember how many there are of those, a few concessions, which is the way the public corporations get floated early in the game. Later on they can actually be purchased with the presidency. Right now they cannot. And then these little bidding boxes, these are new, where you're going to handle basically all these are set up in a randomized order, but it's fixed for the game and known to the players as to when the miners, the privates, the concessions, what order they're going to come out in. And you're allowed to bid on them during the stock rounds, and we'll get to the mechanisms that allow for that. These are little bidding tracks. And let's see. There's a fair amount of terrain in the game. In fact, quite a bit. And that's what the building cubes are going to do. They're going to give you a chance to build track through the terrain at extra cost in time as opposed to money. It's basically being more careful surveying. I think it should just have the building cost, but whatever. We've already decided Peterson doesn't care that much about any kind of accuracy type thing. As usual, for a lot of the more modern games, there's an earnings section here, and then a flat stock market again, which will allow companies to move forward twice, and in some cases more than that. I don't think it's every corporation that moves forward more than that, though. I think it's just the big nationalized railway. At the beginning of the game, there'll be a few shares of that nationalized railway in here, and it gets to start the game operated by multiple players. It doesn't have a normal presidency. Over here I've got a bunch of counters. This is for all the miners. The major corporations are here. These are upgrades for Mexico City. Every time Mexico City upgrades, it'll never let you go through Mexico City, but every time it gets more and more expensive to build to build into. Well, to build a more valuable, to increase the value of the city. And so these will be marked with a cost on them and the type of city it is. At the beginning of the game, it's a $20 city, and it costs $20 to upgrade it to the next level. Just making sure I went through everything. Yeah, I think the building cubes are assigned by a company on a per company basis, but I'm a little confused because the colors don't all match, which is a little weird. We got our little stock round operating rounds thing here. We don't have any player aid cards that I'm aware of. Okay. Like I said, this one's a bit of a mess. So, let's get started. Now, unfortunately, on my side, I only got about 2 hours of sleep because I went to sleep at like 9 in the morning and some fucking kids came and were running around on my porch, which woke me up, and I got up. They were gone already, but I couldn't go back to sleep right away. So, and then one of them comes by with like an older kid or his father. Well, not his father, certainly not natural father, but someone he had convinced to come look. I think because I have a lot of Nikes in my living room. Okay. I don't know what the plan was there, but anyway. All right. I read these rules last week, finished them up, and they've already kind of faded from mind. So we will work through them, looking for things that are different from most XX. But in this game, instead of looking at most XX, it's actually taking the 1822 rules, and the red areas are where there's differences from 1822 of significance. Obviously, there are some differences in here that are not, that are company specific and stuff like that. That's some tortilla on my thumb. That are not in red, so I don't know. All right. Sequence of play. The game consists of alternating sets of stock rounds and operating rounds. Initially, there's one operating round, but once the first 2 train is bought, there'll be 2 in each stock round. Oh yeah, the trains. Yeah, we got a whole bunch of different types of trains. So, most of them are pretty normal, but at the beginning you have these local trains, and on the other side, you can buy a 2 train if you have the cash for it. Early on, the miners that start are not going to have the cash to buy the 2 train. And this thing gets its trains for free. Then we go 3, 4, 5, 6, right? We got the 7 train, but on the other side of that, and at the same time is available, is an E train, which does not work like the ones in 18 New England, but it's similar. Similar in that it has a doubling feature. The way it works is it runs like a normal train with an infinite length, but it only counts cities you have tokens in, and then it doubles their value, which might be very valuable, might not be all that valuable. There are a lot of tokens in this game, though. There's a lot of locations that are tokenable, and a lot of them start with a token in them because of all those fucking miners. Okay. Again, like with 18 New England, I am assuming you're an 18XX player if you're watching this one. If you're not, open up a video on a simpler 18XX. This isn't the one you want to start with. I'm pretty sure of that. Okay. So, the game ends as soon as one of the following conditions is met. In the first stock round, if nothing's sold, sold. Nobody wants to play the game, fuck it. They don't like the initial packet, and they're just not, nobody's willing to bid on any of the things in the initial packet. Okay. And then you either start over again or find something else to play. At the end of the, we're not going to do that. At the end of the operating round in which a company's stock market reaches the 600 point. At the end of the first operating round following a stock round, yeah, that's, wait. At the end of the first operating round following a stock round in which a major company's stock market value reaches the game end marker. Pretty close to the same thing. At the end of the first operating round following a stock round in which the bank runs out of money, the game still ends at that point even if the bank later becomes solvent. When the bank runs out of money in an operating round, you complete the pair of operating rounds you're involved in and then the game ends. This is a kind of weird noise. It's a kind of weird, like, you know, distinguishment, but okay. If somehow you break the bank during the stock round, you only get one operating round, but you get the full two if it breaks a little later, like on the first run. Total wealth is going to be the value of stocks at prices, cash on hand, minus any loans that are outstanding. Players take loans in this game. That's how player bankruptcy is avoided in this one as an end game condition. Peterson seems to really not like that mechanism. Concession certificates, if they're still open and held by players, count for their face value. The concessions actually have a cost to them. I think they're all 100. Yeah. Private company certificates and company assets count for nothing. And miners are going to have their own stock value, which is different from most games. Bunch of shit about etiquette. All right. So the setup was a little complicated. First of all, the number of players determines how much cash they have, how many bidding tokens they have. Then the concession certificates, one of them, the FCM, and this particular private company, which I don't know what it is, but it's number 18, which is sitting over here, makes it from Mexico City through, so it's a pretty good one, which I think kind of guarantees that there's something good enough for someone to bid on. Oh, by the way, all these miners, they convert into shares. Now, that sounds like there's way too many shares. So we'll have to look at the rules for that more carefully to see how those miners end up not being a part of, to see how we end up with only 100% of this. Because it's kind of weird if it's over that. Corporations can own privates in this, and they'll have company-owned privates, different rules depending on who has it at any given time. But also, the miners, I believe, can be taken over by corporations through a certain kind of mechanism. And that can happen in a couple of different ways. And like I said, the concessions themselves provide a base revenue, but eventually can be turned into the director's certificate for a corporation. And they tie to the starting locations of those corporations, which are fixed in this game. You don't, unlike 18 New England, you don't end up with floating corporation names or anything like that. Although, again, I'm not sure how much I trust some of the history stuff. It gets fudged. I mean, even 1830 fudged things by starting the Chicago and Ohio, the C&O out in Chicago. Chesapeake in Ohio. Sorry. Out in Chicago. Or near it. Okay. So, basically, there are 3 decks that are shuffled. The minors, one of which is fixed to be the first bid upon concession in conjunction with that concession. The concessions, there's only 4 to shuffle, and then the privates, but one of the privates got removed. No, one of the concessions got removed and put in here. One of the privates, this one, was fixed as the first one to go forward. And then they're going to be filled out in the order that they're kind of stacked in. And I've spread them out a little bit so people can have an idea of the what's coming without me having to paw through, well, people being me, without having to paw through the deck. I should have a share price. Yeah, so the NDEM share price, and that's going to be one of these more normal size things, is at 100 at the beginning of the game. And then you start the stock round. And we have a phase chart here that describes when all the different phases happen, and there's, you know, basically one for each type of train, including the 2 train, which is initially available, but will not be purchased to begin with. I think we'll hit things as we go. We have sort of a mixed capitalization a la 1856, where, and for that matter, well, you could say 2038, but 1856 is really the one that has it by phase. This has something similar to that, where corporations that are floated in certain phases use incremental capitalization and then switch if they get floated after the 6th train to 100% capitalization. And it's kind of a weird situation, very much like 56. When the 5 train, you're allowed to float them by selling the shares, but it's a partial capitalization situation. So, yeah, that's a little weird, and I don't believe that you have the same kind of release mechanisms that you had in 18NE that allow you to just generate capital where you want. Again, the phases spread out here to discuss. All right, there's 18 private companies. When open, they'll pay a player a fixed income, which may be 0, at the start of each operating round. They have a face value of 0. Joy. A private can only be bought by players through bidding mechanism in the stock round. And they have absolutely no value listed on them, just the income. A private company shows the first phase in which it may be acquired. This is kind of interesting. This one can not be acquired, and it's forced to be on top until phase 5. Now that's the first phase that a corporation can acquire it. So you can pick this sucker up. It's a free 5 train, which, well, it's an extra 5 train for your corporation, which is the first permanent train. So it's a significant value for one of your corporations, I would think. Okay. Let's see. There's no restriction on the number of private companies that may be acquired by a minor or major company on its turn. They cannot be traded between players or sold to the bank. They may not be transferred between companies. Once acquired by a major or minor, a private company certificate is flipped over and placed on the reverse side, or it's removed in play, giving the acquiring company an associated power token or tile. Some of the privates once acquired by a major or minor cease paying revenue. Some private companies continue to pay their revenue even after they've been acquired and flipped until they're closed by using their powers. Close this company to place a plain yellow tile directly on an unbuilt small station hex location, or upgrade a small station to the color, one color of track. This counts as the company's tile laying step. That doesn't sound terribly useful. Here, it doesn't tell you much. It gives you an image of what it's going to be able to do. Oh! Yeah, this allows you to destroy a small town. No, that's actually really cool. Very 1856. You're just allowed to do that in 56's normal track lays. Several Canadian citizens were eliminated. The special property of P7 is that it pays a revenue into the company treasury, variable once it has been acquired and flipped. Yeah, okay. The revenue is paid into the owning company treasury during the pay the private corporations phase of each operating round. Thus, it can't be received by the owning player before acquisition, and again by the company in the turn in which it's acquired. A couple of them are exceptions. The National Mail Service, they're going to create income based on mail contracts that the corporations can fulfill. The powers can only generally be exercised during the owning company's operating turn. Now, there is an exception that private companies, I believe, don't really count in the normal distribution. So you can release them as, I don't know. There's different ways you can use doubling cash. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Privates are never forced to close, but when you use a lot of them, they close. A company can own both the mail contracts, but only one can be used per train. When running an E-train with a mail contract, the mail contract only pays half the base value of the end cities, not half the doubled value of the end cities. And you'll see that the rules are on each of the cards. There's no compendium of them all that I'm aware of. Similarly, when running a mail contract on a destination run, the mail contract only pays half the base value of the destination city, not half the doubled value of the destination city. The powers of a private company, 12 or 13 to remove a town, and 8 an advanced track lay, can be used together as part of the same track tile placement step. Private companies 12 and 13 can only be used on a single town, not a double town. Yeah, there are double town, double doinker spaces in this game, and the familiar 1830 countermix represents them. There's no upgrades for those. So they are just dicky. They can be used as a company's yellow track tile laying action to place a plain track in a single town hex, or as an upgrade action to lay a plain track upgrade of the next color on a previously placed existing track must be preserved. There's private companies that give trains and Pullman cars. The 5-train one up there is a notable example. Once acquired, the certificate's flipped over to show the rolling stock they provide the company. The 5-train is treated like a normal 5-train and can be purchased by another company. The LP, 3-2, and 2P train are special trains and have special rules. A Pullman card is not a train. It cannot run by itself, but it can be attached to another train belonging to the company to give it special abilities. The Pullmans and the special trains, not the 5, are restricted in that they cannot be purchased by other companies. The specials and Pullmans don't count against train limit and do not count as trains for the purposes of mandatory train ownership. And most of them are just revenue enhancers, basically. The P1 5 train can be acquired as a private company once Phase 5 has begun, even if the acquiring company is at the train limit. The acquiring company must check the number of trains owned against the current train limit immediately upon acquisition and discard a train to the bank pool if the train limit has been exceeded. So, a weird capability to give yourself a 5 train, even though you have a bunch of 3s or something. There's 24 minor companies listed in the company tables near the end of the rolls. Wait a minute, maybe the privates are all in here. The track uplays. I do not trust his upgrade charts because an index, that's a nice thing. Okay, what do we got? We got all the privates here, yeah, we got all the privates. List of all the minors and the major corporations. Now, the minors and majors, there's not much to distinguish them. No special rules there, except for this big boy. But the privates each have their own special rules, and we'll be surprised by them. So we're not going to be playing very effectively here, but that's okay. We never are the first time we play one of these. Or the 5th, usually. A minor has only a 50% director's certificate. The other 50% of the company is effectively embedded in the company. There's no other shares in the minor company available to buy. Way too much shit going on in my neighborhood today. Well, here they go again. Jesus. These are different kids. Well, different from the one who showed up. Anyway. I gotta swap batteries, it turns out, which I thought I had a little bit more charge. I might as well now. Apparently my neighbor is doing a lot of stuff. He's very active, but I'm like, I always wish I could be active. I'm not. I'm very inactive. And always have been, but it's gotten worse. All right, where are we? We're on the minors. So yeah, unlike a lot of games which just represent the minors by a single, little card like that, here they actually have a stock certificate. The reason for that is so that it fits in these little bidding zones. I think what they could have done is gotten rid of the minor bidding zones, put the privates over here, created a single card as a bidding thing that held the 3 of these that were available, and then they could get rid of those certificates, which are going to be kind of, I don't know, it's just different from normal, and I don't really see, I think they could have saved some money, actually, by not putting those. However, actually they need these. Never mind. They need these because they flip over and they turn into those. So, all right. They knew what they were doing. All right. Miners can only be bought by players through the bidding mechanism in a stock round. Not all in the first. The minimum bid for a minor company is $100, which, because the director's certificate represents 2 shares, would give it an initial share price of $50, which is the red space here. The bid track starts at 100, which represents this minimum possible bid. We got that here. Whereas if you look over here, the bid prices start at 0. The M18 over here comes in with the FCM concession for a minimum bid of 200. The M18 always starts at a share price of 50. When this pair is purchased, the M18 share price token is placed before any other miners that were started in that stock round at a $50 share price. At the end of the stock round, the player with the highest bid on a minor company must buy the 50% director's certificate for that price bid. The starting price for the company and its initial capitalization depend upon the phase of the game it was bought. In phase 1, no matter what you bid, the minor company starts at $50 with a $100 starting treasury. And yeah, you paid $100 for 2 shares at $50 each. In phase 2, the price bid is divided by 2 and rounded down to the highest value on the starting value area of the stock market, which is outlined in red there. The company receives twice this amount as its starting treasury. For example, a bid of 100, 105, 110, or 115 will result in a price of 50 with $100 capital. Higher bids will get you more capital in your starting private. The most you can bid is 200, I guess, that'll be of any worth, which gives you a price of 100 with 200 starting capital. That's enough money. The important thing is, can you buy a 2 train? Can you buy the current train? The 3 train is $200. That's probably the heaviest thing you can buy. Well, that's the heaviest thing you can buy with the starting capital. Okay. In phase 3 and later, the price bid is divided by 2 and rounded down to the highest value. However, the company starts with the entire sum bid as its starting treasury in this case. So, just sort of this weird thing where, like, yeah, you could bid a lot on a minor and just in order to finance it. And remember, it's a 50-50, you own 2 shares, right? Whatever that means. You get 50% of the revenue of the minor. The other 50% goes into the company treasury, just like miners do in most games. We got a little chart for that. Once bought, a minor can never be sold, although it can be acquired by a major company. A minor company runs in a similar manner to a major. However, as part of its first turn housekeeping, it may purchase an L train if there are any available from the bank. It can acquire one at the start of its first operating turn and hence run the train on its first turn, which is very different from most games where every company kind of passes for its first turn. I think 18NE allowed all the miners to have a 2 train at the beginning. It only gets 1 tile lay per turn. It can only place yellow and green tiles, and it can't use a private company to improve on that. Some private companies may not be acquired by a miner. It only ever has 1 station token, and its earnings are split 50-50. The director controls its actions. The miner company is obliged to own a train. We gotta swap batteries again. This one was a little low charged. Not terribly, but a little bit. The major corps. There are 7 in the game, as listed in the company tables. There are 7 concession certificates in the game, 1 for each major corporation. Well, there's an 8th company that you can own shares in. So, until phase 5, players cannot buy the director's certificate directly. Instead, they acquire them by converting the associated concession during their turn of a stock round. Converting a concession enables the owning player to buy the director's certificate and gives a $100 discount on the price of the director's certificate. A concession counts towards the owning player's certificate limit. A concession certificate pays a dividend of $10 per operating round to the owning player. At the start of phase 5, any remaining concessions are removed from play. For those in players' hands, too bad. From this point, the director's certificate of a corporation can be bought directly from the initial offering as a stock round buy action, as per normal corporate starting in XX games. Concessions are bought through the bidding mechanism. Their face value is $100. Each company's stock consists of 9 share certificates. So there's a 20% director's certificate, which is on the other side of the concession. But here we get to some interesting thing. No one player can buy more certificates of a company once they own 60% of that company. This also applies to the NDEM, which is the nationalized railway up there. However, a player may acquire up to 100% of a major company's stock through share exchange in the acquisition of minor companies. The director's certificate is always owned by the majority stockholder. This is going to be handled normally. In the early stages of the game, the director's certificate can be obtained only by converting the associated concession certificate. Concessions cannot be converted in this way until Phase 2. Once the concession has been converted and the player has taken the director's certificate, the company floats and becomes operational. The company receives twice its starting share price as initial capital. The remaining shares are placed in the company treasury on the company charter. Payment for additional shares bought from the company treasury is made to the company treasury. The partial cap aspect. At the start of Phase 5, the concession certificates are removed and the director's certificate can be bought, flip them to the director's certificate side and place them with the company's other shares. From Phase 5, a newly floated company does not become operational until 50% of its shares are sold. For companies that float in Phase 6 or later, once 50% of the shares are sold, the company receives 10 times its starting value as treasury, and the remaining 50% shares are put in the bank pool without adjusting the share price. Thus, any company that floats before Phase 6 will be funded incrementally as its shares are bought by players, whereas a company that floats in Phase 6 or 7 has full cap. From Phase 5, a company needs to sell 50% of its shares to float, whereas to float in Phases 2 through 4, it only needs the director's certificate to have been converted. Starting values are shown on the stock market in red. Major and minor companies may start at $60 to $100. Only minors are allowed to start at $50. The director of each company controls its actions. Major company earnings may be paid wholly or partly as a dividend or retained. And a major company is obliged to own a train. So there's an interesting facet here, which is if you convert a concession to a major company, you will have to pay some money. You get $100 off the money you'd have to pay. But even if you start the major corporation at $60, its starting treasury will be $120, and you only have your concession is only worth $100 of that. Okay. Let's talk about the NDEM. It sounds like a drug or something. It's a national railway and not typically operated by a single player like other companies. It functions autonomously in most cases, but players who own shares participate in its operation and they get monies. There are 4 10% shares, one of which is a random minor company, which was selected here. All the minors are back printed with 10% shares, and there are 3 shares that are blank on the back. Throughout the game, the NDEM may claim stations in minor company home locations and replace the minor company certificate with an NDM. It may be possible to own for there to be more than 100% of that company. I don't know. The NDEM has no director. At the beginning of the game, its share price is $100. Shares can be purchased from the bank pool. Shares never count against the certificate limit. Ooh, that's weird. They become very valuable then. I didn't realize that. At the start and end of each stock round, if there are any vacancies in the bidding boxes, all the certificates present are shifted to the lowest number of boxes, and then the concession certificates, minor company directors, and private company certificates on the top of their respective piles are placed in the empty bidding boxes. You're not able to bid on things unless they're in a box, so there's a limit to what's available at any given time. Thus, in the first stock round, 4 of the minor company directors, 3 of each major, and the private companies are moved from their respective stacks to the empty bidding boxes. Yeah. The stock round starts with the holder of the player 1 card and proceeds in player number order. Now, I dealt these out just in order, but they're going to shift around based on how much cash you have. And proceeds in player order until all players pass in turn. All share certificate transfers in stock round are made between a player and the bank or a company. Players never buy shares directly from one another. In a player's stock round turn, they may perform one or more of the following actions, which must be undertaken in the order listed. They may perform none of them, in which case they have passed. Sell any certificates subject to limits, repay loans, and then do one of the following. Buy one major company share certificate, convert a concession to a director's certificate, or place or increase up to 3 bids on the concession certificates, minor company director certificates, and or private companies using the bidding boxes. So you can drop 3 bids at once. Shares sold to the bank and trains returned to the bank are placed in the bank pool, which is that little card up there. Items in the bank pool can be bought by players or companies per the rules. The stock market is shown as a linear chart. The value of the company's shares are the space they're on. The spaces in yellow do not count against your certificate limit. A director of a company may be forced to take loans to fund train purchases if the company has no train. A player may not buy any shares, convert a concession, or place a bid while they have loans. A player is not obliged to sell any shares or raise money to pay off the loans. However, if the player has a debt at the end of the stock round, a further 50% interest is charged by the bank. Any debt still held by a player at the end of the game is subtracted from their wealth, and that's going to grow real fast. The sum of any loans in play does not affect the bank limit's money. It is coming from a separate source, not the bank. So, the cash is in your hand, though, and that is part of the bank. So it kind of is coming from the bank. Got some notes here. Examples. Okay. Selling shares. In your stock round, you can sell any number of share certificates, transferring them from holdings into the bank. Subject to certain constraints, only ordinary shares in major companies can be sold to the bank pool. The following rules apply. Private companies, minor companies, and concessions may not be sold. Shares cannot be sold in a company that has not completed an operating round, including the NDEM. A maximum of 50% of the company's stock, excluding the NDEM, is allowed in the bank pool. The director's certificate cannot be sold into the bank pool directly. This is normal rules for XX here for that part. The player receives the current share price from the bank for each share sold. Selling shares causes the company's price to drop after all sales are complete and the seller receives payment. It'll move left for each 10% share sold if sold by the director, or left 1 space total if sold by any other player. Now this is going to start confusing me because I just did 18 New England and it had weird rules where only if the director sold shares would it move back, and it would only move back 1. And here it's like a different little playthrough to try to show this. So I don't know. Selling NDEM shares does not affect its share price. If the token is at the leftmost space, it doesn't move. If it moves a space on the stock market which is already occupied, it goes under. If you sell shares in more than one company, you decide the order. If you own more stock than the certificate limit, you must sell stock if possible to bring themselves within the limit. You can sell some stock but not enough to be within the limit, then you must sell what you can. And you can hold over the limit in that case. It's going to be kind of rare, but if the stock pool is full, if the bank pool is full. To buy stock, the active player transfers a certificate from either the bank pool or company treasury into their own holdings, paying the stock market value. If it comes from the bank pool, you pay the bank. If it comes from the company, you pay the company. Only shares that have a stock market value can be bought in this way, i.e. the director's certificate cannot be bought by a buy action until phase 5, and ordinary shares cannot be bought until somebody owns the director's certificate and set the price. Buying stock does not cause the price to change. Only 1 certificate can be bought per stock round. You cannot buy stock in a company if you sold any of its stock earlier in the stock round. And you cannot buy additional certificates in a company once you own 60%. including the NDEM. However, it's possible to have more than 60%. You cannot buy any share certificate that would cause you to exceed the certificate limits, even if the purchase would cause a change in directorship and reduce your holdings back down. If because of a share purchase your holdings exceed that of the current director, you become the new director. Okay, concessions. Concessions cannot be converted until phase 2 and are removed from play without compensation at the start of 5. The concession holder announces they're converting. They turn over the concession and determine an initial price between 60 and 100 per share. They take the corporate charter, place $100 in the bank, from the bank in the company treasury on its charter. They pay the balance of 2 times the starting price less 100 into the company treasury from the hand. The company is now floated and will operate in the next operating round. The remaining certificates are placed in the company treasury. So yeah, if you start at 60, you would owe $20. Yeah. Concessions can only be bought through the bidding mechanism. At the end of a stock round, those items that have bids on them are bought. A player therefore does not gain possession of a concession until the stock round is finished and can't convert it until the next stock round. And we got other rules for setting up a major company coming soon. Later on, you can form a major company directly. This thing's not loading. I gotta fix my battery. Floating will work normally here at 50% for most companies. The only question is the capitalization. Completing major company setup. Whether formed by converting or directly, the rest of the setup's the same. You take the company's tokens, put the share price token in the corresponding red outline space. Each major company has a revenue marker as well to indicate its operating revenue. Let's get that as well. Now, we're going to want to grab one of these because we have different types of tokens here. Okay. The player takes the station tokens and places them in the charter in the spaces that match the type of token. Each company has 5 regular tokens, 1 black banner destination token. The spaces that are blank are not filled and may later be used if you convert exchange tokens into available tokens. So you start off with your home city, a possible destination token when you reach it, and 1 available token to buy at 100, and then 3 exchange tokens, which you will not be able to use unless you eat a miner. I am going to stop here. I know it's not the best place in the world to stop at the bidding because my battery's almost dead, my tea is almost dead, and it's a good time to break. I mean, most 18xx games have like a 20-page rule book or so. This sucker weighs in at 34. Include, well, you know, I mean, a little less. There's charts and tables and stuff, but just to give you an idea that, you know, there's a lot going on in this one. I managed to fix my lighter enough to get a clip tie to hold it together, which it's not optimal. It's a little loose, worse than ever before. Yeah, I know. I can send it to Zippo and they'll fix it. I've done it before with this one. They soldered on a new hinge and it lasted for about a year. Whereas my one from the 1940s, maybe 50s, is just, you know, it's always been perfect, but I wouldn't take that out. I would not be. I don't have that here, actually. It's at my mom's house. Well, my dead mom's house. Okay, so bidding. There are these bidding boxes, 4 for minor company directors and 3 for major company concessions and private company certificates. At the start and end of each stock round, if there are any vacancies in the bidding boxes, the remaining certificates are all shifted to the lowest number boxes, and then the top of that category is put into the boxes lowest numbered first. Each player has a limited number of bidding tokens based on the number of players. This is the maximum number of items that they can bid on during any stock round. They don't get them back by being outbid or anything like that. Remember, you can place 3 bids, though, at once. To place a bid, a player performs one of the following. Place an unallocated bidding token in an empty space on a bidding box. Move a previously placed bidding token to a higher valued empty space on the same item. This is only allowed if another player had placed a higher bid on that item. So you can't boost your bid, which there's something a little goofy about that. I don't think that should be disallowed for this reason. If you realize late that, oh, I needed more money on that company, you're screwed. So, I don't know. Players can place or move up to 3 bids in one stock turn. The opening bid on any item must be equal or greater than the face value. All bids are multiples of 5. They're recorded on the chart. A bid must be higher than any previously placed bids for that item, and the bid must not raise the player's committed resources to more than their available cash on hand. Your committed resources are the sum of the amounts bid for items which you have the highest bid on. So, if you get outbid, you get some cash back, essentially, available to deploy elsewhere. I am assuming you can't later use those committed resources to buy shares from the pool. I don't think there's a rule on that, but I'm not sure. If a player wishes to bid $100 or more over the face value of the item, they may do so. Use a spare token. And you can do this multiple times. If you bid on an item and you cannot withdraw that bid by taking the bidding token back into your hand or moving it to make another bid on another item, even if you are later overbid by another player. We got the certificate limits. Each private company concession or share certificate that you own counts as a certificate against the limit. Share certificates for a company whose stock market value token is in the yellow, though, do not count. You cannot buy any share certificates that would cause you to exceed the certificate limit. You may not place a bid on an item if you are at the certificate limit. Each item on which a player currently has the highest bid counts against their certificate limit. If you own more stock than the certificate limit allows, you must sell stock if possible to bring yourself within limit. You must sell as much stock as you possibly can if you can't get under the limit. Once all players pass consecutively, stock round is over. Then you take the share price tokens for the sold minor companies on the stock market at the price they were sold at. Next, each player pays for and takes the items on which they were the highest bidder, removing their bidding tokens as they do so. Because minors run before majors, it's convenient to put the minors on top. Yeah, we'll figure out how to handle that. If 2 or more minor companies float at the same price, they're placed in order of the amount bid on the first round. On the first stock round, they can only start at 50. On the round that the M18, though, is bought, which is this guy. He's automatically available first in every game. He will be going first before any of the other minor companies that start at 50. Then for any minor company in which no bid is placed upon it at the end of the stock round, including the M18 if it did not receive a bid, one L2, there's a huge stack of them there, those are all L2s, is removed from the game. Let's see. And placed on the NDEM charter, discarding the cheapest trains to meet the train limit. In Phase 1, the NDEM only takes Ls. In Phase 2, it only takes 2s. Once there are no L/2 trains remaining in the bank, then no action is taken. Now, the NDEM may look impressive, but late game, it's not going to get any of the 7E trains, I think, if I recall correctly. Oh, wait, no, apparently it does. Okay. Then if the minor company in minor company bid box 1 is unsold at the end of a stock round, it is removed from play, and the next available new train from the bank, not the bank pool, is placed in the NDEM, again discarding the cheaper trains if necessary. Thus a minor unsold in bid box 1 could remove 2 trains from the bank if there's still at least one L2 train remaining. This train counts as a sale and can cause a phase change. So what is this? Yeah, okay. So you only get free trains for the NDEM while the L2s are available, or when the first, and which one's number 1? When the first minor is passed on. But the M18 have anything special? See, the M18's over here, which is kind of interesting. Okay. But I don't think it counts as a minor company because it's over with the concessions for now. We'll see. While the NDEM is open, any minor company that is removed by the game is turned into an NDEM station. Flip the minor company share over to show the NDEM share and place it in the bank pool. This share is available for purchase. The NDEM may have multiple unconnected stations in a given hex or tile. If the tiles with separate stations merge, it turns into one. And I think the NDM doesn't get any stations, any bonus station. Let's grab it out. Compared to all the other stock charters, it does not have as much stuff. It doesn't have a treasury. It doesn't have token spaces, anything like that. So yeah, I think the only way it generates tokens is through minor companies. We'll get into more about it in a little while, but after the NDEM has closed, which happens during Phase 7, the minor companies are still removed in this way, but instead the minor company's home station locations become available for a major company to place a station token. 70E trains need no longer be taken for the unsold minor in bid box 1 as they are unlimited. Yeah, I was right. They don't get taken. So the NDEM takes a 7 train, but that is going to close the NDM. It may get a run, though, first. All other unsold items stay on, I believe they do, actually, stay on the bidding boxes. Those in higher numbered boxes are moved to lower number boxes, and stuff fills it in. The bidding boxes are repopulated at the end and again at the beginning of each stock round. This is relevant after Phase 5 when companies can acquire minor companies directly from the bidding boxes during an operating round. And you probably don't want to buy one. I'm not sure. As a personal ownership. The player 1 player order card for the next stock turn is given to the person with the most cash. Player 2 is given to second most cash. This is annoying in terms of mechanically, it's just more complex, but it's kind of a cool mechanism. I think we saw it in 1880. I tried to look just on the box to see who did it. Let me check to see if it's a Peterson game. It's an interesting mechanism. It's a Lonnie design. And I think they've done it in others as well. I've definitely seen it in other games, but 1880 was the first one that I remember seeing it in. Okay. And then anybody who has outstanding loans pays 50% interest on it, which may well result in them having to take out more loan. I don't know. There's no cards or anything like that for loans. We're going to have to figure out a way to deal with loans. We can use chips, but we have to put them on something to indicate that they're not just cash. End of stock round share price movement. At the end of the stock round, if 100% of a major company is in players' hands, except the NDEM, the stock market moves one space to the right. All affected stock market tokens move in descending share price order from top to bottom when stacked together. If a company's token moves to a space in which is already occupied, it goes to the bottom of the stack. In descending, yeah, so the guys who go first. The highest value ones keep their position. Minor companies are never 100% sold out because they only have 50% of their stock. The NDAM, I think, can have more than 100% stock out. I really do. We shall see. And it may have less than 100% available at all times. You know, it may just depend on how many of these fall. Initially, there's one operating round after each stock round, but once the first 2 train is bought, then we go to 2 operating rounds between each stock round on the next set. Operating round turn order, privates and concessions pay their dividends first, whether to players or companies. Minor companies run in descending share price order, then the major companies run in descending share price order, and finally the NDEM runs last. If the stock values of 2 or more companies are equal, then the one whose stock market token is on top runs first. This decision is deferred until it has to, until the company actually runs. Okay, in the operating round, you perform first turn housekeeping for starting companies. You acquire private companies from consenting players. This is usually going to be your own, especially since I think no money changes hands. You can lay an upgrade track, check for connection to a destination location. First place I saw destinations is 1870. I think I've seen them. Wait, no, there's a different kind of so this is one kind of destination. 1856 also has destinations of a different type. But this is more like the 1870 type. Place a station token for major companies if you wish. Run trains to establish earnings. You must. Pay split or withhold dividends. Minor companies always will split. Buy rolling stock. Acquire a minor company from a willing player, or from phase 5 onward, you can get it from a bidding box as a major company. And this is parenthesized on the bidding box only. I don't think minor companies can acquire another minor company ever. I think the parenthesized major companies only applies to the entire thing. Issue or redeem company stock. We saw that in New England. It might be a little different here. Routes. Anything fancy here? A route must not... Yeah, I think the routes is going to be pretty normal. Most gray off-board spaces are termini. There is an exception up here with Tucson. Okay. It's just spelled funny. Gray areas are pre-printed with revenue income that varies by phase, listed by the color, normal stuff. There are dashed blue lines between Baja California and Mexico. These represent ferry connections that are only used for demonstrating route connectivity when acquiring a minor company, not for placing available tokens, laying tiles, or running trains. For this purpose, all of these spikes are considered connected. Port tiles placed on them do not affect the connectivity, although they will affect the visibility. Rolling stock. Choo-choos. There are a whole bunch of types here, and we got them listed here. See, the L is rusted by the 3. Well, the 2 is rusted by the 4. Even though they're on the same card, they have different costs and are treated as different types of trains. The 3 is rusted by the 6. We got the number available here, too. Look at that. Fucking ridiculous. The 4 is rusted by the 7 or E. 5 is your first permanent train, so for $1,000 you could get 2 5s. Which is perhaps better than an E, but an E at $1,000, I believe, runs 4 stations, and you might be able to do better with those 4 stations doubled than with a traditional double 5 setup. So, interesting setup. And there's only 2 5s, so it's going to be, well, there's a third one. So it's going to be pretty hard to get a pair of 5s with, what, 7 corporations? Maybe 8? I don't know if the NDEM counts as one of the 7. Okay. Each operating minor or major company has to own a train at the end of its operating term. An L local train runs in a city in which it has a station token of the owning company. It can additionally run to a town, but does not have to. It's thus a 1+1 train. Both major and minor companies may own L trains, but only a minor company may buy an L train as part of its first turn housekeeping. Only one L train may operate on each station token. For 2 through 7 trains, this is their normal thing. Doinkers count as locations, etc. The 5 train acquired through the P1, which is automatically available to begin the game. You can't get it on a corporation until phase 5, though. Once acquired by the private company, acquisition is treated exactly like a normal 5 train, is not subject to any other restrictions. The acquisition of the private company is treated as a private company acquisition, not a train buying action, and thus is not subject to the normal restrictions on train buying, which is to say you can grab it when you have enough trains already. A Pullman card converts a normal N train into an N plus train. An N plus train may count any number of towns in its run, in addition to counting up to the number of cities that it hits. When they say N, they mean the number of the train type. So like a 7 with an N is a 7 plus, not a 7 plus 7, but a 7 plus. It earns the revenue, which just means it can hit as many towns as it likes. It earns the revenue from passing through these towns, even if it does not count them towards the limit of N. It can begin and end at a town. A Pullman card can be used with a special train. It cannot be used with an E train. Although a Pullman cannot be sold between companies, it can be attached to a different train owned by the same company each operating round. A Pullman is permanent. A company may never own more than one Pullman, nor may Pullmans be sold between companies. A Pullman is not a train and does not count for the purposes of mandatory ownership. A company with only a Pullman is still forced to buy a train. It does not count against train limit. The L and 2 trains are double-sided. When buying one of them, you choose which to buy. When upgrading from an L to a 2 train, the card is flipped. It counts as a train purchase. It's an $80 upgrade, so it costs you a little bit more than the 2 would, but you get to run. It's kind of a cool option, but you may not desire it. The 7 and E train are also printed double-sided. When buying a 7 E train, the company director chooses which to buy. 7s cannot be upgraded to E's, however, nor E's downgraded. An express train only stops at cities with station tokens of the owning company. It can pass through other stations on its route, not counting their revenue values, as long as there's a regular opening for a route. It follows the E train can only stop at an off-board location. If a station has been placed there. The value of each station that the train counts is doubled. There's no limit to the number of stations. Oh, I thought it was 4. But here's the thing. Corporations aren't going to have a lot of stations in general, but they have a capacity to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total. So they can be quite large, but they're going to have to absorb a lot of miners. They're going to have to absorb 3 miners to get to that size. They might be as small as 3 if they reach their destination. Their destination is locked in just like their home is, so if they're shunted away from that, they could just be a 2-token company. I got to swap batteries. I was trying to hold off, but we're getting too close here. Okay. E-trains double the doubled values of the destination city. So they double everything, including the destination, which was already doubled. You can only have 1 E-train per company. It can run on the same track as other trains. Interesting. Minor companies can own E-trains, but because they have only 1 token, they cannot operate them. Great. It might be a way to exchange money, but it sounds iffy. There are 3 special trains that are bought as private companies in addition to the P1 5 train. which is a normal 5 train. You can only own one of these special trains at a time. If you have one of them and acquire another, you must select one to discard from the game, and it's not available to be purchased. These trains are permanent and not subject to rusting rules. A special train can never be sold and does not count as a train for the purpose of mandatory train ownership. I.e., a company with only a special train is still forced to buy a train. The special trains do not count against the train limit. Okay, the 2P train and the LP train are just like 2 and L trains, except they last forever. The 3-2 train runs like a 3 train, but its earnings are halved after all bonuses, Pullman revenue is included. Round up the halved earnings to the nearest multiple of 10. The purchase of trains advances the game phase. Each time a new type of train is bought or taken by the NDEM, the phase advances. At the start of certain phases, trains rust, blah, blah, standard stuff. First turn housekeeping. On a major or minor company's first turn of operation, the company director puts the free home station token on the home city, places the initial capital in the company treasury. A minor company is allowed to buy an L train, if any remain available from purchase, from either the bank or the bank pool. And when emergency money raising to buy a train from the bank or bank pool, the cheapest available train must be purchased. Thus, a minor starting with 100 in its treasury cannot choose to buy a 2 train using emergency money raising, but must buy an L train. The minor company can buy an L train at the start of its turn during first turn housekeeping. All minor companies started in phase 1 have $100 treasury. Minor companies started after that could have more. Acquiring privates. A company, major or minor, may acquire privates from one or more consenting players. It is common for the player offering to be the director of the acquiring company. No compensation is paid. Ooh, one of the big moves in the 1830 line of games, and in almost everything with privates, is to grab cash out of your corporation into your pocket, allowing you more investment capability. This is taken away from that, so I think privates become a lot less valuable. Yeah, minors were always better than privates in most games, but yeah. But maybe not in this one, because some of the privates have some really funky stuff going on. Once acquired by a company, a private company is flipped over and its special properties are used by the acquiring company. So for example, with the train one, it turns into a train. You know, there are some exceptions to these rules as noted in the descriptions for each private company. Okay, laying track, upgrading, and placing a builder cube. Companies can place track tiles on the map and or place builder cubes. Most build actions are to place tiles on the board. The placement of yellow tiles is differentiated from upgrading because various companies have different building allowances. Also, there's costs. Phase 1L and Phase 2. Each company can take one yellow tile build action. Major companies can't actually form until Phase 2, so each NDEM shareholder can take one yellow tile build action. So an interesting reason you might want to grab one of those shares, even though it's not going to make a lot of money, you can control some of the track lays. Starting on Phase 3, a minor company can take a yellow tile build action or an upgrade, but limited to green only. A major company can take 2 yellow tile build actions or 1 tile upgrade, any color, in sequence as normal. Each NDEM owner may take 2 yellow tile builds or 1 tile upgrade, again, to whatever color. Each yellow tile build may instead be used to place a building cube, and we'll be using the bidding cubes as building cubes because they both start with B, so it's fine. Yellow tiles are laid on and aligned with the hexes on the map. Pretty normal. Towns are represented by solid black circles, but they'll end up being doinker dashes when they come on the board as normal. Large open circles are the large cities, may be labeled with a letter. You can only place labeled large city tiles may be placed only on corresponding labeled large city hexes, and only corresponding labeled tiles can be placed on such hexes, but there are no yellow T's. You use a plain yellow city tile with a T marker in order to remind you where there is. There's a spare T marker, and then there are a whole bunch of blanks, which I don't know what I'm going to do with. Some hexes start with existing track on them and an initial revenue value. Other large cities on the map have no track and they have a value of 0 to begin with. Companies are not obliged to lay any track. If there's no track in a hex where a company's station resides, the company may lay any suitable yellow city tile there. It's a funny thing in the 18 New England, the only city tiles available were the wide cities. This one has all of the cities, which is kind of cool. I don't know why he made that choice in that game, but it's just weird. If upgrading plain track, some of the track on the newly placed tile, which is present on the old tile, must form part of a route of the company, and all the track of the old tile must be present with the same orientation as the new town. Town and large city tracks may also be placed or upgraded if the operating company can trace a line to that. This is a weird statement because all the track in the game is angled track, and you can always, it's always increasing your route. So it's real, like distance-wise. So I don't even know if that rule is necessary. One wonders if the original 1822 did not use this kind of track, but used the more standard XX curve track that doesn't allow you to backtrack on curves. You can't lay off the hex grid. Oh, there's one red bordered space. You can't cross that. Offshore arrows. These little allow greater flexibility in track placing and upgrade. The ones that point to water also allow placement of a port tile. So yeah, you'd be able to upgrade here so that it goes off the board. There's just some cases that allow you to place more track than you would normally be allowed to place. That'll be in the private company description. The red line in Guatemala is a hex side on the edge of the board, and track may not be built on it. Yeah, it's this thing. The map has rivers, rough terrain, and mountain ranges. Placing yellow track tiles in these regions, difficult terrain, costs the laying company the cost. It's written on the board. Rivers are 20, rough terrain is 40, mountains are 80. The cubes are set aside as builder cubes during the setup, and they're the pool of rail building contractors can be hired instead of a yellow tile build action. Cubes can be placed on any color hex where a difficult terrain cost is marked, but not on Mexico City. When they say any color hex, see, it only costs you to place on yellow tiles in these regions. But I believe if you're putting green on here, you have to pay the 80. But if you upgrade, say, a yellow track from here, you do not have to pay the cost again. The initial cost was sufficient. That's, as usual, I think the Sicily one. What the fuck is that? 1849 there, I think. I think the Sicily one had continuing costs to build track, which kind of makes sense, but anyway. Okay. Cube color doesn't matter. Okay, so they're not associated with companies. So players have their builder cubes. I don't know why there's as many colors as there are. We have a whole bunch of extra cubes here. Anyway. All right. I thought they were assigned to companies. When placing a builder cube, the operating company must have a route to the edge of the hex and may lay a cube on that hex instead of track. 1 cube pays for river or hill. 2 cubes pay for mountain. A single cube on a hex with multiple terrain costs. Well, no. A single cube on a mountain provides no discount. Multiple cube discounts can be used if you're dealing with multiple different terrain costs. When the tile is laid, the cubes go back to the pool. Terrain costs can be paid upon tile placement with already laid cubes or cash from the active company at the director's discretion. I don't know why you'd want to, I guess, to rape a company. If the supply of cubes runs out, cubes may be taken from those already played on the board. A major company may use a yellow tile build action to lay a cube and then immediately lay a yellow tile, which counts as the second yellow tile in that hex in phase 3 or later. It could use the two yellow tile actions in all kinds of other ways. Except for difficult terrain, track placement and upgrades are free. Company with insufficient funds cannot lay track in difficult terrain. A company may choose to play no track at all or may play less than its full allowance. If two tiles are being played, they do not have to connect. The 7, 8, and 9, the very simple, straight, wide curve, sharp curve pieces are an unlimited quantity if so needed. What am I going to do about that? I don't know. In phase 3, green tiles become available. Phase 5, browns. Phase 7, gray. It's possible a company has multiple tokens on the same hex that are not in the same city grouping. This is allowed, and when these tokens merge, the excess token is returned to the available section, so it's viable. If the brown and gray colored track tiles, there are tiles for large stations with 5 track segments and an equivalent tiles with 6. When playing them, you must use the 6-way tile in preference of the 5 wherever possible. I gotta sneeze. Okay. This is important. This is something that didn't exist in 18 New England. At least not that I remember seeing. Well, at least not that I saw. And because I do remember looking for it and not seeing it. Which allowed you to basically eat up the more lenient track pieces so that people couldn't place track in certain locations at, the brown cities, whatever. Mexico City. Okay, Mexico City upgrades cost $20 for each upgrade with no option for builder cube discounts. No tile is placed to make the upgrade, but it counts as a normal track lay of the appropriate color. Instead, the next token in the MC track color upgrade sequence is placed at the center. Prior to upgrading to yellow, the Mexico City station has a revenue of 20. Pre-existing track exists from each of the city to adjacent hex. An optional black MC tile is there to match the height. Now we'll see this one has 20 and it has a $20 cost. That doesn't, yeah, these all say 20. Okay, cool. That's fine. Okay. The 5 unbuilt hexes around Mexico City are reserved for the adjoining companies and cannot have yellow tile placed on them without the agreement of the director or concession holder of the respective major or minor company. However, any company with a route to the hex side may lay a building cube in that hex following normal rules. If a company that controls such a hex has no director or concession holder, then the tile may only be laid if it connects to the associate Mexico City station to the existing track. There's no restriction on upgrading these tiles once placed. So if there's nobody controlling it, you can kind of link into it at least. It's not legal to run a train from one Mexico City station to another Mexico City station, and it's not possible to run through Mexico City. After laying your tile, if the major company can trace a route from its home station to its destination station, then it must place the destination marker in its destination station. This is free of charge. This must be done as part of the operating company's turn at the first occasion in which the connection to the destination is made. The action cannot be deferred. When a major company is tracing a route to determine a connection to its destination, it need not have a train that can reach or indeed any train at all. When it runs a train between its home station and its destination, it doubles the value of its destination. This only applies to one train per operating round. If an E train runs a destination route, then the double destination value of the city is doubled by the E train. The route need not start or end at the home station or destination station. It may extend beyond either of them. Yeah, it kind of sounded like those had to be the terminuses. If the destination station token has a black banner on it to identify it. Not a if. I added that for no reason. Okay. Destination stations are not reserved and can be tokened by other companies, but it's still available to the owning company, and they'll be placed off to the side like shown. This is a reserved station here. The company hasn't come out yet. This one is one that's a claimed destination that's on an empty space. And then this one is the remaining destination station. If a reserved space, or if a new empty unreserved space opens up and somebody's lingering on the edge of the board like this, or on the edge of the tile like that, they get sucked into it and end up actually filling it. Each major company has a total of 8 tokens. There's 1 each for share price and latest earnings. Those look very different. And 6 for stations on the map. When each major company starts, it can utilize 3 station tokens: the home, a destination, and 1 available token. Each minor company only has a single home station token. And they're, again, these tall cylindrical things. A major company that acquires a minor company may play an exchange token on the map in place of the acquired minor company's home token. If it doesn't do so, it must move the exchange token to the available token if it has an exchange available. Each turn, a company may place a single available or normal station token. It may never place more than 1 of these per turn, except that a home station token placed in the first turn housekeeping does not count against this, and the destination token and exchange tokens do not count against the limit. A company which has an available token may place 1 on a vacant city or off-board space, which is part of a route of the company. No more than 1 station token of any company can be placed in any single city off-board area. 1 space on each company's home hex is reserved for that company, and other companies must leave a space free if that company has not yet had its first operating turn. Note that there must really be a space there. It's not enough to claim that it might be upgraded. Some hexes or tiles, including Mexico City, have ungrouped stations. No more than 1 token per group is permitted. Okay. Everything on the board has ungrouped stations right now, except for a couple of these. So, all right. In most cases, a company may not have more than 1 token in a hex. The tiles and off-board areas show conventional grouping or slots by enclosing them in an oval. However, there are some exceptions in hexes with pre-printed track on the board which start with separate unconnected token slots. The upgrade paths for these cities are a single merged city. If it is possible, typically via minor company acquisition or NDEM privatization token auction, that a company has multiple tokens on the same hex that are not in the same grouping. This is allowed, and when these tokens merge, extra tokens are returned to the available. Now, so this is weird, because it says it is possible, typically via minor acquisition and NDEM privatization, that the company has multiple tokens. Is it allowed for them to buy an extra token? It's probably a dumb idea, but because they'll just waste the $100 or whatever. Exchange tokens can only be used by acquisition of minor companies or for acquisition of NDEM tokens by auction when the NDEM closes. Once placed, a station token may not be moved, although a minor company station token can be removed because of acquisition, or if the minor company is removed from the game at the end of a stock round. Minor companies never receive more station tokens. Station token placement other than home stations, destination stations, and exchange tokens must be paid for, and they always cost $100. If you don't have the cash, you can't do it. Run trains. Okay. Most of this is going to be normal. Have to be separate, completely separate routes, although they can hit the same cities, whatever. There are exceptions, however. An L train runs in a city which has a station token of the owning company. It can additionally run to a single town, but is not required to do so. I think when it's run as a 1+1 train, it counts as using that track, though. A train with only one L train can run on a given station token. A train with a Pullman cart attached counts any number of towns in addition to the standard number of cities. At least you're calling them towns here. I think elsewhere in the world they call them small cities. But an E train only stops at station tokens belonging to the owning company and skips all others. It may run on the same track as other trains, and the value of stations is doubled when determining earnings. Every route must contain at least one of the company's station tokens on it somewhere, and routes cannot pass through stations. This is standard stuff filled with other companies' tokens. The value is the sum of all the stations. When you run between your home and destination, including excess cities, you double the value of the destination station. This is only one train per operating turn. If an E train runs, it gets to double the doubling. The operating company must run its trains for maximum total revenue achievable, but there are exceptions here. When running a train with a mail contract, the run's value may be reduced to increase the mail income to the operating company treasury. In particular, if a company is running a plus train with a mail contract, the train may stop at a large station to maximize mail income rather than running beyond to a small town in order to maximize the earnings. It's up to the director. When running a special train and paying the revenue differently from the revenue from other trains, the total revenue must be maximized, but the relative value of the split between the special trains and normal trains need not maximize either of the two separate amounts. That can be a little weird. A company's earnings are the sum of the values of the routes run by trains. The highest legal earnings announced by any player must be declared, but players are not obligated to announce earnings higher than those declared by the director. So, as in all 18xx games that I'm aware of that have this kind of rule, you must declare the highest, you must pay out the highest amount, but you can not mention the highest amount if you see it. The earnings token should be placed on the revenue track to reflect the total amount earned. This step is optional but serves to remind players later what the earnings were and speed up the game. Distribution. So you have three choices. Swallow the entire earnings, pay it as dividends, or pay half of it as dividends. There are some additions though, of course. And keep the other half in the treasury. This will round up in favor of the dividends. For a major company, the revenue from a special train can be added to the revenue of the company's other trains, or you can make a decision on whether to pay full split or retain differently from the regular trains and for the special train. Wow, talk about an annoyance, but it's a nice little function that allows you to steal just a little bit of money from your run when you don't want to pay half or whatever. A minor company always splits the total earnings of all of its trains. If the revenue for a special train is treated the same way as revenue from a major, then the sum of all the revenue is added to determine total revenue, and then you pay out what out. The revenue is actually paid per share to shareholders, determined the company's share price movement. After choosing how to pay the earnings for each train, including any special train, the revenue of each shareholder is paid to their shares, affects the share price movement. Any revenue that's retained has no impact. The stock market is shown as a linear chart. The company withholds its earnings, or if its earnings are zero, the token moves one left in the market. Normal stuff. If the company pays out less than its share price, it doesn't move. If it pays out at least its share price, but less than twice, it moves one to the right. If it pays out at least twice, it moves two spaces to the right. A minor company must pay 50% treasury, 50% to director. If it pays a dividend of any non-zero amount, its price token moves one to the right on the stock market. It does not pay a dividend, it moves to the left. Weird, I'm not used to miners having a stock value. If the movement of a company's price token would take it off either end of the stock market, it stops at the last. In any case, if the share price token moves to a space which is occupied, it goes to the bottom. All right. We got to hit purchase rolling stock. I need a break here. So I'm going to put this card to remind me and charge for a little bit. My throat's beginning to go. We're about 2/3 of the way, I say. All right, after a little bit of rest, let's look at buying choo-choos. Looks pretty standard. You can buy from company to company for at least $1. On phases 1 and 2, the L train can be converted to a 2. After that, I guess they can't. 7 and E's are simultaneous. You can buy multiple trains, one after the other, though. Trains that are discarded by the NDEM are removed from the game. That's going to be hard to remember. And it will always discard the cheapest train. Remember, it's managed by all the players who own stock in it. So it's like kind of weird. And it runs last. I'm not sure quite how the ordering of its operations are. We'll have to get to that. All right. Forced train purchase. Often this is kind of weird. First of all, the special trains don't satisfy the requirement to own a train. You must buy a train. If you can't afford to buy it from the bank pool or bank, you must buy either the cheapest train from the bank, or if you can arrange a purchase with another company without having to go into emergency funding. For double-sided, this means that the cheaper version must always be the version that's purchased. Yeah. So when you buy a train from another company, the director can't contribute any cash. When buying from the bank or bank pool, you first use your own cash. Stock in the company treasury is useless. If this is insufficient, then the director must make up the shortfall between the company's treasury and the cost of the train. We're going to have to look at the reissuing, but I'm assuming it has to be done. I don't know. The last one had a specific ordering for reissuing. We haven't hit it yet, but it's the last thing in the sequence, so I think it's the same kind of situation where you have to pre-plan when you want to reissue your shares. And here, unlike 18 New England, I think it's not something you can do for free, basically. Like, there's some cost to doing it. Well, there's some cost in that as well, which is that you lose the stock value that you would gain, and you lose the revenue that you would gain. So, but at least I played one that I had to do that recently. Okay. Now, the director is selling multiple shares of a major company, then they sell them all at the starting price. Yeah. You sell them at the price that they're at, just like you would in a normal sales. If you're unable to raise the purchase price of the train, you must take a loan from the bank for the shortfall, but you must sell stock if you can to cover it. And the bank will charge an immediate 50% interest on the loan, so the amount of the loan will be 150% of the shortfall. right off the bat. And then that gets increased if you don't pay off the loan during the stock round. A major company may get one minor company each operating turn. The acquisition can be made in the operating round in which cannot be made in the operating round in which either company runs for the first time. The major company must be able to trace a route from one of its station tokens to the home station token of the minor company. It's not sufficient to be co-located on a city hex if the station slots are not joined. That's different from New England. The directors of the two companies must agree on the acquisition. It's usually going to be the same player. All assets needed for the acquisition must be in place before the acquisition can be enacted. Cash acquired by the major company as a result of the merger may not be used to help pay for the merger. And if the requirements are met, the major company may acquire a minor company from a player or from the bid boxes, which is phase 5 through 7. Okay, getting it from a player, and this is at any time starting with phase 2. A major company, and there aren't majors before that, a major company buys the assets from the director of the minor company, their minor company stock certificate, and in doing so acquires all the assets owned by the minor in the form of its station tokens, cash, private companies, and trains. The major company must buy the minor company from its owner for the value of the minor company, twice its current share price. The major company may contribute 0, 1, or 2 shares with the share price of these shares used to calculate the value of that portion of the payment. The balance must be paid in cash to or from the major company treasury and the director of the minor company. If the shares are given in payment and their value is greater than the value of the minor company, then the director of the minor company must pay the difference to the treasury of the major company. So that's a way to get some cash into the major. Basically, I think you're free to choose between 0 and 2 shares as part of the payout freely. And its current market value, its current market value. Irrespective of the relative share prices of the two companies, the number of shares transferred from the acquiring major company to the director of the minor company can be 0, 1, or 2. If the value of the shares transferred is less than the value of the minor company, then the major company must add cash from its own treasury to top up the value. If it's more, then the director has to pay the difference to the major company. Basically, Peterson doesn't seem to like games where you can do a lot of economic manipulation and win the game that way. That's what got me into 18XX originally, but I'm going to trust him because I enjoyed 18 New England, so, okay. Then after you handle the payments for the minor company, you transfer the cash holding of the minor company to the major company treasury, transfer any trains held by the minor to the major, any excess trains discarded. The major company can discard whichever trains it wishes out of the pool. Transfer any private companies or builder cubes that the minor company owns to the major company. So this is weird. Builder cubes aren't really owned, but there are some privates that give building cubes. So that may be what he's talking about here. Like, you may have cubes on your company that are available for extra play or something along that line. That's what I'm assuming it is, because building cubes that are on the board aren't owned by anyone. Remember, the color doesn't matter. Okay, what do we got here? Transfer any miners, any private companies or building cubes that they own. If the major company has any exchange tokens, it either exchanges the minor company token for its own exchange token, or removes the minor company token from the board and transfers an exchange token to the available. You're allowed to do this even if you don't have exchange tokens, but you don't gain a new token out of it. And in fact, you can't use the available tokens to place the new station under any conditions. If a major company has a station token in a city and acquires a minor with a station in the same city grouping, it automatically becomes an exchange token. The exchange token becomes available. Some cities, though, have disconnected track, and when they merge, extra tokens in excess of one are returned to the available section for use according to normal rules. A major company with no exchange tokens remaining may acquire a minor company, but it doesn't get any kind of bonus token. It doesn't get to add an available to the board, nor to its charter for this. If both the acquiring company and the minor company to be acquired have special trains, then one of the two trains has to be discarded because you're only allowed one special train. Once a minor company's been acquired, it's removed from play. You can also acquire from the bid boxes. From Phase 5 onward, a company may instead buy one and only one minor company from those remaining in the bid boxes. This is per operating turn. Right? Yeah. The major company must be able to trace a route from one of its station tokens to the home station of the minor company. It's not sufficient to be co-located. And you can't make the acquisition on the turn in the operating round that the major company runs for the first time. You don't have to worry about the minor, though. It hasn't run. It's still in the bid box. As its acquisition step, the major company pays $200 to the bank to acquire the minor. If the major has any exchange tokens, it gets to do the exchange token thing, same as before. It can either get a new station that now shows up on the board or get a new available token. If a major company has station token in a city and acquires a minor with a station in the same grouping, move the exchange token to the available... Yeah, this is the same shit. Okay. Once a minor's been acquired, it's removed from play again. Issue and redeem stock. A major company may either issue or redeem its own stock, but not both in one turn. Issued stock is transferred from the company to the bank pool. Issuing stock causes the company's price to move one step left per 10% share issued. Ouch. The company receives from the bank the final resting price after dropping the price for each 10% share sold. Wow, that makes redeeming stock really an iffy choice, as opposed to an 18 New England where it's like a Wild West show and everybody's getting big trains. Issuing stock must not cause more than 50% of the stock to be in the bank pool. If the token moves to a space on the stock market which is already occupied, it goes to the bottom, blah, blah, blah. It can issue stocks at $5 that would push it beyond, and nothing happens. It just stays at $5. A company may not issue stock in its first operating turn. Redeemed stock is transferred from the bank pool to the company. The current price must be paid from the company's treasury to the bank. More than one certificate can be redeemed in a single operating turn. Redeeming stock does not cause the company's price to change. It also doesn't qualify for all stock in players' hands. I obviously, the way I worded that, it doesn't qualify. But let's take a look and make sure. It has to be in players' hands, yeah. I was just making sure because in 1870, redeeming stock was a way to get your stock market to increase each turn. So it was a value even if you didn't need the cash for anything. All right, the next one's the NDEM, and I'm having some physical issues that I have to deal with. So I'm going to actually go deal with those and be back in a bit. Let's hope for the best with that. There's a really pretty moon you can see from upstairs, but I went outside and it's just barely poking through the trees. Kind of weird how much angle I get there. Okay, the NDEM. This is one of the big new things from 1822. But again, there's been a lot of red text, right? Except possibly in its final operation, it runs last in each operating round. Has no director or treasury. Its operation is limited to building tracks and cubes, running trains, and paying a dividend, which it'll always pay out in full. Its track building step is shared among players that have at least one share. In player order, from lowest to highest, each player with at least one NDEM share may do one turn of build actions following the rules for a major company. NDEM shareholders may take build actions in Phase 1 before majors may form, in which case they each get one yellow tile build action. It has no treasury to pay for terrain, but it can place builder cubes like majors. It can never upgrade Mexico City. You need money to do that. And if no player owns any shares, it doesn't build. During its run train step, the player with the lowest number in player order with an NDEM share counts its run. Other players can demonstrate higher revenue if they wish. If no players own the shares, the player with the player order 1 card does this. It does not have a treasury and does not buy trains in the traditional way. It pays from the bank 10% per share, even if there are more or fewer than 10 shares in play. Yeah, there we go. The price moves left if the NDM's revenue is 0. It moves right if 10 times the dividend, if it meets the share price. If it's double, triple, or a higher multiple, it jumps the respective number of boxes to the right. So unlike the majors, this thing can jump 2, 3, 4 boxes, whatever. It's not limited to double jumps. And it's getting trains, so it's kind of interesting. All right, after the purchase of the first 7 E-train, or if the NDM takes it, the game halts. If the company bought a 7 E-train, complete the company's turn and then perform privatization, or if a company. If the NDEM takes the 7 or E, but it's going to be a 7, it never takes an E. Perform the privatization immediately at the start of the next operating round. Run the full operation of the NDM one final time before the operating round happens, and then cash out from the bank. The NDEM shares at their current value. If the first 7E is taken by the NDEM, this operation occurs at the start of the operating round, before privates even and whatever. After running it for the final time, its trains are discarded from the game, and it no longer takes miners from the miner company bid box 1, nor new trains from the bank. Okay. Players now take turns bidding for the NDEM station tokens on behalf of their major companies. Starting with player order 1, players take turns until all players pass in succession. On their turn, a player may auction an NDM share token on behalf of one of the major companies for which they are director, or they may pass. At least one of the companies for which they are director must have the cash for the bid, and an exchange, not an available token, may be placed in that location. The company does not need a track connection. Companies may not place a second token in a hex from this. The minimum bid is the value of the city where the token is located, or $10 if the city has no value, i.e. it's one of these that hasn't had any track laid. And all bids must be multiples of 10. Players in turn order may bid higher multiples of 10 or pass. Any player that passes is out of the bidding for that item. The auction continues until all but one player passes. The winning bidder must take an exchange token from one of their companies in which they're director and replace it. The result of the auction may not be used to move a token from exchange to available. I don't think you're allowed to even bid if you don't have exchange tokens, but that's not absolutely clear. Any stations which are not sold, privatized, remain on the board as blocking tokens, but serve no other purpose. Resume operating round in the next company to operate after the one that bought the first 7 train, or E-train. The one that is first in operating order if the first 7 was taken by the NDEM. We have some interesting notes. This is one thing I really like. The designer puts notes in as to what he's doing here. What's he doing? I don't know. He doesn't really say much. He wants a short play time. There's not a hell of a lot really here. It says new players often ask how much to bid for the M18 FCM concession. And he says usually between 225, 275. And remember, it is 2 things. It's a concession which is worth $100 to begin with, and a minor company. So that's kind of an interesting combination. It's certainly worth more than, the $100 or whatever that the minors or concessions generally are worth. So it looks like a tasty thing. And it comes out of here. It is the only thing hooked up right at the beginning of the game to be able to run a 2-train. Not that it can have one right away, but that's the FCM. The 18 is next to it. So yeah. Yeah, it's the two of those. Oh, and it has to be both. Yes, yes. Because the random share is over there. The random minor company that's been removed is in the bank pool as an FDEM or NDEM share. List of differences, some easy to miss rules. Now, I think there was something in here that I could not find in the rule book. So I'm going to look for it. Red private companies cannot be acquired by minor companies. Yeah, so this is going to be in the mix of information in the minor companies. But this is actually important, and it's not in the rules. Red private companies cannot be acquired by minors. Green private companies can be acquired by minor or major. Private companies in players' hands count against certain limit. The only time a player can assign a private company. Now something doesn't count, and I think that's the minors, which is weird. But they have no value, right? No, it's the privates that have no value. Oh, weird, 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 weird. Let me find cert limit. I had that somewhere. There's so much weird in this game that didn't see there. Oh, there's no easy place. There is an index, which is pretty weird here. Certificate limit 5.11. Let's see what that says. Certificate limit. Oh, each private concession or share certificate counts as a certificate towards. But minors are not in that list. Yeah, and NDEM is not in that list. Very weird. Okay. But wait a minute. Minors are shares, aren't they? Yeah, minors have a share certificate associated with them. So they do count. It's the NDM shares that don't. They're the only thing that doesn't. Okay. I don't think this is the thing, though. I'm looking for something that feels really different. Yeah, I'm not seeing. I thought there was one. Not seeing anything. We may find that like with 18NE New England, I had real issues and fucked up enough that I had to restart the game. Yeah, I'm not seeing what I thought I had. Let's take a look at all the different miners. I don't know. All right. Baldwin Locomotive comes with a 5-train. Mexico City Short Line comes with a 2-train. I'm kind of looking through this to make sure, but there's so many words, and I don't want to just read all this shit when we'll be looking at them. Imported goods is a 3-2 train. Another special train, the Mexico City Sightseeing. We got Pullman cars. There's 2 of them here, and they've already been kind of discussed. Okay, European imports. Declare 2 times cash holding. If held by a player, the holding player may declare double their actual cash holding at the end of a stock round to determine player order in the next stock round. If held by a company, it pays a revenue of $20, $40, or $60, depending on the period you're in, and does not close. That's kind of interesting. I think this can be done multiple times. So you can grab, it's the person with the most money who goes first, right? You don't remember. Oh, boy. Yeah, this is going to be painful. Yeah, most cash. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So I had this discussion in 1880. Whoever has the most cash has kind of is the person who passed, sort of, without without creating the same issue. So like, if you passed a lot, you might have a lot of excess capital on hand. That's kind of the feeling, but it also often just tends to be, whoever just happened to have too much money. But you can engineer it more easily than in games where you can't control, the guy who goes after you, who fucking is doing 18 things on his turns. Okay. Advanced non-city tile lay. The owning player may lay 1 plane or town track upgrade using the next color of track to be available before it's actually available. The normal rules for progression must be followed. You can't skip a color using this private. And once you exercise the power, the company closes. And you're giving up a $10 return revenue, which I believe is usable. The miners still can't go above green. Extra tile lay. The owning player can play an additional yellow tile or 2 for major companies, or make 1 additional tile upgrade. And looks like all restrictions apply. And once you use the power, it ends. Most of these seem to have a revenue of $10. There's nothing above that. There's a couple zeros and a 5. Okay. 3 builder cubes. When acquired by a company, the private company closes and is exchanged for 3 of the builder cubes from the cube pool. The company may spend 1 or more of the cubes and place them on the board during their lay track action. These placements are in addition to tile placement, and these can occur anytime during the action, can be split among turns. Yeah, so these are the cubes that you'd inherit. And another one that has 3 builder cubes, and again, this closes the company to take those cubes. American investors. Remove town. Allows the owning company to place a plain yellow track on an undeveloped town or upgrade a town tile to one that is similar, that has the same track included in the upgrades, whatever. And another one that's the same, a different American investors. Americans like to destroy people. Mail contract. Okay. This we haven't looked at, and let's look at the rule. After running trains, the owning company receives income into its treasury equal to 1/2 the base value of the start and end stations of one of the trains occupied. Modifications to the values, E-trains, 3-2, destination token, do not apply. An L train may deliver mail within a single city. The company is not required to maximize the dividend from its run if it wishes to maximize its revenue from the mail contract by stopping at a large city and not running beyond it. A company that owns more than 1 mail contract cannot use more than 1 on any single train, and we got a couple of those. We got promissory notes. Stock drop. Pays $10 while owned by a player. A company must pay the bank $10 while owned by a company. Whoa. A major company may close this company during its operating term, but that makes its stock drop one space. If the company ever cannot pay the $10, this private company closes and the stock drops immediately. Why would you want this? Pays $10 while owned by a player. A company must pay the bank $10 while owned by a company. A major company may close it, but this makes its stock drop one space. I don't know, like, this seems to be something you'd only put on a company if you're going to rape it. Okay, small port. And we have two different ports coming. Replace a spike going into the water with this tile. Lay the tile on a spike that does not already have a port. The spike now counts as a 30 or 40 location, treated like a gray offboard area for counting runs from all companies. This is in addition to the company's normal tile placement, and the company does not need a route to the spike. Once acquired, the private company pays its revenue until it's used. And then the large port is the same, except it produces 40 at green, which is the same as this, but 50 and 60 as time goes on. Then we get to the index, which is a very helpful thing in general. A tile manifest that tells you what the upgrades are, and we'll see if we find any errors in it, but we're not going to look too carefully. And something that I really like, I don't remember if 18 New England had this, but a map to be able to reference. Sometimes you need to be able to see the blank map, and that's useful. So there we are. We're ready to start playing. I'm going to load this up as the rules intro or whatever, as long-winded and painful as it may be. Maybe we'll take a peek out, see if the moon's anywhere interesting or looks interesting. Yeah, it's okay, but it was much bigger before. It's still big. It's still close enough to the horizon. All right. I just thought I'd catch that, if I could. And yeah, I mean, I expect to get some playtime in tonight, this morning. It's already well into the morning. But given my sleep schedule and whatnot, and I also suspect that I may fuck a lot up on this one. So be warned.